Good day and welcome back. In this video, you'll be learning how the web works, HTML basics, CSS basics, and at the end of the video, you're going to put together all you've learned to build a simple web page application. If you're ready, let's jump into the video.
Have you ever wondered how the web works? In this lesson, I'm going to tell you exactly what happens the moment you type the address of a website into your browser and hit enter. As part of this, we're going to talk about a few important concepts and terms that you need to know as a web developer. So let's say we launch our browser and head over to a website like codewithmosh.com. Now this address that we have in the browser address bar is called a URL, which is short for Uniform Resource Locator. Basically, it's a way to locate a resource on the internet. Resources can be web pages, also called HTML documents. They can be images, video files, fonts, and so on. So we type the URL of a website and hit enter. What happens now? Well, there are two pieces involved here. The browser, also called the client, and the computer or computers that host our target website. We refer to these as web servers or servers for short. This is what we call the client-server model. The client requests a service, the server provides that service. So our browser sends a message to the server and says, hey, give me the homepage of this website. This is kind of similar to how you send your friend a text message. You can think of your phone as the client sending the message and your friend's phone as the server receiving the message. Now back to our example. This message is formatted based on a protocol called HTTP or Hypertext Transfer Protocol. You've probably noticed it before but never knew what it is. In simple terms, HTTP is a language that clients and servers use to talk to each other. It's not a programming language, it's just a plain textual language for communicating over the internet. We also have HTTPS, which is HTTP with encryption. So the messages exchanged between the client and the server are encrypted. Here's a simplified example of an HTTP message. With this message, the browser tells the server what it's looking for. So on the first line, it says that it wants to get a page or a file called index.html using HTTP version 1.1. Index.html often represents the home page of websites. On the second line, we can see the host, that is codewithmosh.com. And on the third line, we can see the language that the client can accept, in this case, English. Now don't worry about memorizing any of this. All I want you to understand here is that this message is structured based on the HTTP protocol that clients and servers understand. So the server receives this message, it figures out what the client is asking, and then it will send a message back to the client. The first message is called an HTTP request, and the second message is called an HTTP response. Every data exchange using the HTTP protocol involves two messages, a request and a response. Now, what is in the response? Here's a simplified example. On the first line, we see the version of HTTP protocol used, followed by a number which is the status code. 200 means successful or OK. Right below that, we can see the date and time of the response. Next, we can see the type of content the server is sending back to the client, in this case, text/HTML. And after that, we can see the HTML code or the HTML document that represents the homepage of codewithmosh.com. Of course, the actual HTML code is way longer. Now, as the browser reads this HTML document, it constructs what we call a DOM or a document object model. Don't let this fancy name scare you. This is a model that represents the objects or elements in our HTML document. What are these elements? All the building blocks of our page, like paragraphs of text, images, links, and other stuff. You will see this in action in the next lesson. Now, as the browser is reading this HTML document that is returned from the server, it discovers references to other resources in this document, like images, fonts, and other stuff. Each of these resources has an address or a URL. So for each resource, the browser sends a separate HTTP request to the server to fetch that resource. Many of these HTTP requests are sent in parallel, so we can see the page as quickly as possible. Once the browser has all the necessary resources, it will render the HTML document. Rendering an HTML document means displaying it. It's a fancy technical term we use often. So in a nutshell, our browser sends an HTTP request to the server and receives an HTTP response. This HTTP response contains an HTML document. The browser reads that HTML document to construct a document object model and render the page.
What is HTML? HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. This is a language that is actually not a programming language, but it's a markup language, meaning that it's a language that we use to define the structure and layout of a web page. All right, the only purpose that this HTML serves is to put content on the web page. And you're going to see that in practice. So to start writing your code, you need to create a file, and you give your file a name, any name. Actually, you can give it, but for me, I want to give it index.html. So we can begin to write our code. But the first line of code that comes here is what we call doc type HTML. What does it mean? Doc type or document type simply means or it simply tells the web browser the kind of document that we are creating. All right, that's what it means. And the next line of code that follows this is HTML elements. Okay, so this is an element. In HTML, we have different elements. Actually, web pages are made up of elements and content. So the next element that follows this doc type element, after declaring it, is the HTML element. All right, remember that the kind of document we are creating is an HTML document. So HTML element needs to wrap every other element that we are going to be writing. All right, so in this HTML element, there are three major elements that we can put inside of it. The first element is the head element. I'm going to tell you what this does. The next element is the body element. Okay, there are just two elements we can put inside of this. There are just two elements we can put inside of this HTML element. So the first one is the head element, and the next is the body element. So talking about the head element, the head element contains any element that can describe to the browser what our website is doing. For instance, one of the elements that we can put in this head element is the title element. So the title element gave a name of our website to the browser. How do I mean? Okay, let's say we want to create a website for, let's say we want to create our portfolio website, and so we want to title it portfolio. Alright, so this is the title we have decided to give to our website, and we put it in the title element. So let's see what it's doing on the web browser. Right click anywhere on your editor excuse me, right click anywhere on your editor and come to open with live server. Remember, we have installed this extension before, so this is what this extension is doing. Open with live server. So can you see it? So the title we gave to our website is already here. Can you see it? So that is what the title element is doing. Right, I hope that is clear. And there are other elements we can put in this head element, but just know that any element that you have to put inside this head element has to be describing what the website is doing. All right, so next up we have the body element. So it is in this body element that you put every other content you want to put on the web page. It is inside this element, it is inside this body element that you put every other element. You have header, you have section, you have div, you have images, you have videos, you have buttons. Whatever you want to put on the web page goes inside this body element. So in our case, for the sake of practice, let's say we want to put our logo on the web page, and a little description and maybe a button. So let's start with our logo. But first, to put our logo on our website, we have to put the logo in our file here. And as you can see, we don't have any image in this file. So the best thing to do is to create a folder for image. And you can just name that folder images. So that is to tell us this is an image folder. Alright. So you can now come to your computer, come back to your computer. Anywhere your images are located, you can just navigate there. Alright, these are my own images, and I want to add this image to the folder in my code editor. So I can just copy this, Ctrl C, okay, and I come back here. I open this document. Inside this image folder, I paste it here. Alright, so we are good to go. Come back to your code editor. Come back to your code editor. So we have the images folder, and inside this images folder we have our image. That is the image I want to use in this video. Alright. So to load it, we need an element called image element. Alright, the image element has two attributes. The first attribute is called the source attribute, or the SRC, as you can see, and the other attribute is called the alt, or the alternative attribute. So I'll tell you what the two does. For the source attribute, it gives us the path to the image we want to load on our web page, while the alt attribute tells us, like, it kind of gives an alternate description of the image in case the image did not load on the web page when you visit the website. Alright, but for now we are not doing anything with the alt. We're only going to deal with the source. Alright, so for us to get the address to our the image we want to load on our website, we have to look at where the image is located, and here the image is inside the images folder. So we are going to enter images slash the name of the image, brand, whatever. Alright, you can see it. So let's save it by pressing Ctrl S. Let's come back to our website here and see what we have. Wow, so did you see it? The image is actually working. Let's come back to our code editor. But it's big though. We are going to fix that. So we have successfully loaded image on our web page using HTML. Remember I said HTML is used to put your content on your web page. All right. Next up, let's say we want to add a description to this logo. We say this is my brand logo. We are going to use a paragraph element, and then you enter the text. This is my brand logo, and then I want to add a button. Click here. You add a button by adding the button element B, that is the button element. All right, and then you write click here. Alright, so far we have three elements that we have put in this body element. So let's take a look at how it looks. Remember that at the end of every code you write, you must ensure to save it so that you can see it on the web page. So far we have this. Can you see? We have our image, we have the text below it, and below it we have the button. But did you notice that HTML does not care about how your document, how your content is arranged on the web page? The only thing it cares about is to put everything there for you. So you have the job of arranging it and organizing it by yourself using another tools or technology that we call CSS. That is the next thing you're going to be looking at. So just to note that the only purpose that HTML serves is to put content on your web page for you and leave it there. That is what it does. Alright, so far we have added 3 elements in our document or in our file. So moving forward, we want to know what CSS is so that we can use CSS to style our page nicely, so that this image that is too big, we can reduce it, and also we can try to arrange the text and the button and to fit them together. Alright, next up, let us look at what CSS is and what it means. So CSS stands for style. CSS stands for cascading style sheet. Alright, cascading style sheet, that is what it stands for. And the purpose of this CSS is to nicely design the content that HTML has helped us to put on our web page. Just like we have image here, we have text here, and we have button here. So what CSS will help us to do is to help us to design it nicely to fit our tastes. And so there are ways that we do this. So the first thing we do to begin writing CSS code is to come to the head element. You don't write CSS code outside the head element in an HTML file. So you write CSS code inside the head element in an HTML file. So you write CSS code by writing style. Alright. So you're going to write some declaration, and this declaration contains properties and values. So you're going to write for you to target each of these elements to style. You write the image because it's an element, img, okay, followed by curly brackets. Just notice the syntax. It's very simple, it's not that hard. Just notice the syntax. Alright, so we want to style the image here. Let's focus on the width. So we want to give the width property a value. Let's say we want to give it 70 pixel and see how it will look. Save it. So you can see that our logo has become smaller. Alright, that is what CSS helps us to achieve. So let's increase this to 80 pixels. Alright. What if we increase it to 90 pixels? Alright, so it's fine this way. Let's try to style this text. So to style this text, we are going to target the paragraph element by writing P followed by curly brackets. But let's give it a font size of let's say 25 pixels. Save it. Oh, this good. Alright, so you can see how it looks. This is fine for me. It's just a practice. We are not designing anything much or serious. Alright, so I want to design the button. I want to style the button too. I don't like the way this button looks, so let's try and style it. So to style the button, we are going to target the button element by writing button followed by curly bracket. Alright, so what are the things we want to style on the button? Already you can see a kind of tiny border around it, so we want to remove that border by saying border should be equal to none. Save it and you're going to see, so the border is gone. And then we want to give it a padding. The padding simply means the space between the text and the little line you are seeing like this, both on the left, right, bottom and top. We want to give it some space, so we can take padding padding, let's give our padding up and bottom, let's give it say 8 pixels. Left and right, let's give it 12 pixels. Yeah, this is fine. At least for me, it's fine. But you can reduce it, you can increase it, just for the sake of practice, okay? All right, we want to give the button a border radius. So let's say border radius, let's say 8 pixels. Save it and see how it looks. So for you to see it clearly, let's give it a background of black and text white. Background, color, black, and color of the text inside it, let's give it white. Color, white. Let's save it. All right, so let's give it a cursor pointer. This is telling us that when we point at it like this, it will be point. Okay, let's save it first. So when you point, when you put your mouse on it, when you hover on it, it will be pointing. All right, so far you could see what you can use HTML and CSS do in a very simple way. There are a lot of cool things you could do with these two languages, but in a very simple way. Basically, you can use HTML to put content on the web page and use CSS to style it to your own liking. That is all I want us to cover on this topic, HTML and CSS. There are lots more to this. There are lots of things you can do with HTML and CSS. But simply, you have seen how it works and what these two are all about. So we have come to the end of this lesson. So before we go, I would want us to design a simple web applications with the little knowledge we have gained about HTML and CSS. All right. All right, what is CSS? CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. Just as the name suggests, it is the technology you use to design the content that HTML has put on your web page, just as we have it here. Let me quickly show you. Okay, just as you have it here. HTML is not concerned about how the layout is. Its own work is just to put the content there for you, and it has put it there for you. Right now, you have to design it to your own taste. So the technology you use to design it to fit your taste is what we call the CSS, and you're going to see it in action. All right, so there are a few different ways of writing the CSS, but I'm going to show you the best way, all right, to write CSS file. Firstly, you have to create a file for it, and you can give it any name. You can give it index.css, you can give it any name, but whatever name you are going to give it, it must have the .css extension to tell you that this is a style sheet. So we are going to give it index.css. So before you begin to write your code, come here to reference it so that the HTML will know that there is another file that is related to it. So the best way to write it is to write the link, all right? Use the link element. So the link element has two attributes. The first one is the rel and the second is the href. The rel actually stands for relationship, showing the relationship between the HTML and the CSS file. And also the href is what points to the file you are referencing, which is the index.css. So you type the index.css. Alright, so we are safe and we are good to go. Coming back to the index.css file, we want to style this element. We have just 3 elements in this HTML document, so we want to style this element. So the way to style it, we have about 3 ways to style it. We can style it by targeting the element's name, such as button or image, or P, which is paragraph, Or we can style it by giving it an identity, such as, let's say we have class. I want to give it a class name. We can just give it IMG. All right. I'm going to show you the way this tree works. Or you can style it by giving it another identity that it is known as ID. All right. So you can also give this name, maybe like P element. But the best way to go about this, since we don't have many elements in this document, is just to target it or to select this element by their name. So we are not going to be using any identity actually here. We're just going to be using or targeting them or selecting them by their name. So we are going to select the image element img, followed by curly bracket, followed by curly bracket. And so what do we want to have in the img? How do we want to style it? We want to target, we want to reduce the size of the image because it's too big. As you can see, we want to reduce the size of the image, it is big. So let's reduce the width. We can give the width say 80 pixels. Save it. Alright, save it. You can see our image has been reduced, and I'm okay. We can just increase it a bit, at least so you can see the title beneath it. We can just give it maybe we can give it 100 pixels. 100 pixels. All right, 100 pixels is fine for me. So next up, we want to style the description beneath it, and that is the paragraph element. So we target it by the name, followed by curly bracket. And let's say we want to give it font size of let's say 18 pixels. Font size of 18 pixels. Okay, we can reduce the size to 20 pixels. Oh, sorry, it should be font size, not font. Font size. All right, so this is fine for me. This is fine for me. And so let's style the button elements too by targeting it, by targeting the button. So we write the button. Firstly, we want to remove, there is a border. You could see there is a thin line at the edge. You want to remove it. It's called the border. We want to remove it. So we say border none. So you could see that the border is gone. So you want to give it a padding. Top and bottom, let's give it 10 pixels. Left and right, we're giving it 16 pixels. Let's see how that looks. All right, this is nice. For us to see it clearly, let's give it a background color of black, and text color of white, so that we can see the color inside it, white. All right, that's cool. So the edge is too sharp. Let us apply a border radius properties and values. Let's say border radius. We can give it let's say 8 pixels. Well, I think this is fine. All right, and then cursor pointer. This actually okay, change when you hover on it, change to a pointer icon, kind of icon. All right, so basically what I have tried to show you is how you can use HTML to put content, whatever content you have, be it image, video, text, whatever content you have. So to use HTML to put it on your web page, and also to use CSS. All right, to use CSS to style it nicely. You could see the way it's looking a bit nice. All right, so in this class I've been able to show you what HTML is, what CSS is, and how you can use them to create a web page and to style content on the web page. Next up, we are going to be putting the little knowledge we have learnt about, we've gathered about HTML and CSS to design a simple web page application. Alright, see you next.